Thanks for tuning into the Stampscapes channel. This is a scene that we're going to be stamping on this very visually loud holographic cardstock. What I'm doing right here is I'm applying some white brilliance ink in the background to do some blocking out so that my imagery will show up when stamped in black ink over the top of it. I have a pretty big field of white ink applied. It will dry on this surface, but it won't adhere, so we'll have to spray seal it later. Editions of the impressions. You can probably use a StazOn solvent ink, but I'm using the black brilliance ink just because I thought it would be thicker and more easier to read in terms of the impression quality, just because it's a thicker ink on top of that thick white ink. We added in the foreground there with those boulders with lichen, and then we're adding in the autumn imagery in the background. Okay, so that imagery can be seen in there. Adding in some textural elements here with the tiny rock small. Okay, now these have been spray sealed with a workable fixative. Now what I'm doing is I'm going back in with some more of the black brilliance ink to add some shadows into the setting, into the elements, to give the scene a little bit more depth. Now what I've done is I've spray sealed that, so now you can see what the sealant is doing when it's applied over the top of both the imagery and the cardstock. It becomes a little bit more muted and I think tamed. Now, because I've spray sealed, I can go in and I can color my imagery with this alcohol marker, and it won't smear or spread my imagery around because the imagery is now locked down with the sealant. We go in with light tones, and I'm going with brighter tones here, and when I go in with the brighter tones, it really stands out, so I go in with the lighter tones again to blend that out. And I'll continually do this. I'll go back and forth between light tones and brighter, darker tones, and we just keep doing that until we get kind of what we want as a base coat. Okay, you don't need to be perfect with this. Going in with the foreground here, adding some purple to the shadows, a little bit more shadows to the elements in the background, but this is providing a base coat. What we're really going to be doing later on is defining a lot more detailing with acrylic paint pens, which I come in right here with, okay? So you don't need to get a perfect foundation with those alcohol ink, foundational colors that you lay down. It's just kind of give you a reference for these other types of media to come. All right, so I start off with the paint pens. I usually work from dark to light. Opposite with transparent media, where I'm working with light to dark. Okay, you can see my forms starting to kind of develop and take shape. They look a little bit more three-dimensional. Everything's two-dimensional here. Going in with my white paint pen to add in some tree trunks and to do some more detailed types of structuring in here. A little bit of the waterside shoreline with that white pen to differentiate the land from the reflections in the water area. Okay, now, and the foreground needed a little bit of continuity with the background, so I added in these tree elements down here, and I'm doing the same type of treatment to them with the alcohol pens and the acrylic paint pens. And then we needed a textural element in our rocks that was similar to what was going on with the trees, so I'm adding these little highlights. A little bit more white brilliance ink for some clouds in the background, just to kind of vary the sky a little bit more than it had been, and then adding that same white pigment ink into the terrain to give it a little bit of mist and kind of atmosphere. Foreground elements, a little bit of a visual focal point here with the kayaker. Adding in some bleed-proof white stars, because at certain angles this background cardstock can look like day, but then if you tilt it in another way it looks like night. I hope you enjoyed this scene and this very dynamic paper, and hope you kind of gives you some ideas as far as potential experiments you can do.